So, where do I begin? Valheim, one of the most popular survival and indie games of all time. This is where me and my friend Dakar have spent the last 2 years working on a world, the size of which had never been seen before. But before we started development, I also spent a year planning. In that year, I had big dreams, but I never dreamt it would take up to 70 hours to play through the whole world. And now I'm going to finally take you guys after 3 years on the full journey of making the completely free-to-play Valheim Adventure Map. Hi, so for a little bit of background on this project, I'm ninebyte, the original creator of the Adventure Map, which added a story and countless hours of free content to Valheim, and which you might have seen on YouTube when the alpha came out due to some unexpected success. And this is my friend Dakar, the other creator of this world, who has added quite a few locations himself and also helped to make the technical side of things possible. Speaking of, it's taken us 2 years of creating tech that didn't exist to make this free world, and we've shared it all with the Valheim community in the hopes that other people can make their own adventures. So if you think that's cool, then you can help us get the word out by liking the video. So the last 2 updates on the map are huge updates, which I'm excited to talk about for the first time in a video in a bit. But to understand them without asking you guys to go back and watch the other 4 videos we've made, I thought I would just make this into a full story video. So you can just sit back and relax, and let's take a trip back to the alpha where it all began. Alright, so in the beginning we started from almost nothing on a brand new Valheim map with a very unique world spawn isolated on an island. This would become a little safe oasis for the main town, where you come back to many times throughout your adventure through portals that you connect yourself inside the other towns. Each time you come back with more and more information, eventually giving you access to the in-game location, which is really cool, and I've never shown it online. All I can say is that it may be placed somewhere pretty awesome. So I mentioned starting from almost nothing, and that's because I started off this journey by using some really cool mods by a mod developer named Jer. Shout out to him, because without him, none of this would be possible. With these mods, I made blueprints of and brought in every build that I had ever created on my YouTube channel into one large area, and that I called a build graveyard. So the builds in the build graveyard were actually the foundation of the early map, providing a good head start on many of the locations. The main towns, the first real builds in the map, are a great example of this, because they weren't just copy and pasted into place. Instead, they provided a good head start with a build, but then I got to work and modified it into 3 similar builds to create a theme for a few of the towns. I also sent the map to Dakar, and through some help from Jer and his mods, he was able to apply some really cool new tech to a few of the graveyard buildings and make his own haunted town. Check it out. So after we created the towns, I created a very long road connecting all of them, and along that road we added the rest of the locations in the map using the rest of the builds in the build graveyard as the foundation. Those locations then all needed their own loot, lore, and enemies. But more importantly, it needed to have increasingly better loot and more difficult enemies to prepare you for each upcoming boss, and it needed to have more and more connections with the lore to connect the whole world together with a story. Speaking of, the story is a great example of the early efforts taken to invent new tech that you can experience without mods, which means that everyone can play, even on console. That's because the story is told not with dialogue options that would require mods, but instead on modifications to the runestones in the game, where we had an early breakthrough allowing us to change the text and write our own story, with the most important text even saving to the player compendium for referencing later on. The story, by the way, has individual quests in each location, kind of like side quests you could say, and also has the main story, which is all connected through the 5 main towns, and which is about the only inhabitants left in the world called the Elders and their ancient knowledge. They help adventurers who have been sent to Valheim by Odin to cleanse the world of the bosses. So, along with adding the loot, lore, and enemies, we also had to add lots of new custom game mechanics unique from Valheim to really bring the locations to life. This is where a lot of new tech had to be invented, ranging anywhere from custom keys, to hidden passages, to parkour elements, to boss arenas, to ambushes, and much more. And things got pretty crazy once we started really using field commands to change the properties of pieces. This started off, as you've already seen, as stories on runestones, but ranged anywhere from simple things like bouncy ladders to pretty complex things like location labels, which pop up as you arrive in special places from hidden runestones, or one of my favorites, the shops near the main towns where you can actually buy things from modified altars. So after creating a unique experience from Valheim, we also created the need to explain how things worked. So we used the spawn island town and the first road section going towards the first boss Eikthyr to explain many things in-game like you would see normally in a game tutorial, and we also made a readme. So after a while we had our first update where the full story was in, all the locations were operational, everything you needed was taught and explained, and all of the game-breaking bugs were fixed thanks to feedback in the Discord. And that's when the Valheim Ashlands update came out. Alright, so the Adventure Map Ashlands expansion picks up in the secret in-game location, but this expansion takes everything you just heard about, where you follow an adventure down a road, stopping at locations and towns, and adds a completely new type of, instead, semi-open world experience without a road. Now with Dakar working on literally building Helldivers in Valheim for his own channel, and with the fact that I was completely out of builds in the build graveyard, it meant that for the most part I was alone. And except for the experience I had gained from the rest of the map, I was actually starting from zero this time. So I got to work building all new locations, and this time building full-on explorable environments with much more choices and freedom in exploration, and with a whole new approach to level design. It took months, but in the end I even convinced Dakar to come back and add a few areas himself. The full video covers many of the specific details on the expansion, but the most important thing here is that it builds on the same fictional story and adventure-based style, but mechanically played very differently. That's because there was no road, but instead semi-open world exploration, where it's all connected in one big environment through new mechanics like locked doors and hidden keys. Also, in the original story, you are returning to the main spawn town, and now you are returning to the lava refinery. The refinery has a whole new mechanism for farming each new gemstone, which, when paired with the flametal found near soulstones hidden around the expansion, allows you to periodically upgrade your gemstone weapons to eventually be extremely powerful. Alright, so the adventure map could have been done right there. The whole map was playable and people were enjoying it. I had also just spent months in the Ashlands creating some of the best work I had ever created on the channel, with better level design, with explorable environments, and with a bunch of new tech and custom game mechanics. It would have been a great stopping point. But it's finally time to talk about how I instead decided to bring the whole map before the Ashlands up to the Ashlands expansion standards by splitting everything up into two final massive updates on the roads and the locations. First, I wanted to do the road update because in the expansion, a lot of the feel comes from explorable closed-in environments, but before the expansion, it comes instead from the journey as you travel down the long road. In the alpha, I created the first road with advanced tools from Jer's mods, painting on quick textures to get things started. Eventually, I smoothed out and shaped out those roads with more advanced tools like the ramp tool, and we even made special paints for texturing the roads specifically for each biome. I also added lampposts with a blueprint to light it up and really bring the road to life. But after the work on level design in the expansion, especially with the ability to paint on lava, which was awesome. I was inspired to go one step further, in fact, a few steps. So in this update, I started off with adding a checklist of 9 things along the entire length of the road. Divots, bumps, rocks, meandering pathing, cleaning up the edges, adding unique landmarks and nature features or rest spots, and much more. All hopefully making the road feel much more realistic and immersive. Next, there was a slightly neglected aspect of the adventure, which was that in the story, each boss controlled the road leading up to them, even more aggressively as you get closer to the boss arena in some cases. Now there were some places where the roads already showed signs of a boss before this update, but I wanted much more. So Ecthir, the boss of the Meadows, summons a storm and lightning, so his road got storm damage. The Elder, the king of nature, and the Black Forest got overgrown elements. Bone Mass, the oozing leader of the swamp, got ooze. Motor, the frozen dragon of the mountains, got ice, and the Queen, the controller of the Mistlands, got mist and black marble. These signs were also accompanied by unique banners designed for each boss, with some even having different versions as you get closer. You'll also notice that they are more slanted and fallen over as you go, showing more destruction, which the lampposts also shared, and which the checklist of divots and bumps also played into, with the road being more and more destroyed. So now that the roads themselves were upgraded to be more immersive with better visuals, a huge checklist of improvements, and loads of signs from each boss, it was time to focus on the unnecessarily long gaps that had no locations. So first, some boring sections that were not ideal for locations were removed, with road skips added to keep up the pace on the adventure. Then on the other hand, some gaps got filled in with locations, or 6 brand new locations and 7 new half-size locations. These half-size locations were inspired from the semi-open world explorable Ashlands environments and had bordered walls, usually created from walls of trees, and they provide a skippable section where you can risk it and go for more loot, or skip it and continue down the road with the assurance that you're only missing extra loot and not anything important to your progression. And finally, for just a little bit more immersion, we even added a Road Workers Guild, which has their home base right after the first main town, where you get to see their workshop, and then throughout your entire adventure, you will periodically find the road workers maintaining the roads from the destructive influence of each boss. Now the road update focused a lot on level design and making the roads more immersive, but the location update was focused a lot on both level design and mechanics. So let's talk about it. So every location pre-Ashlands expansion started off by getting basic performance optimizations with unnecessary pieces removed, better lighting choices, and some other miscellaneous things. But more importantly, each location, just like the road, also had a checklist. For one, it seemed like despite there being plenty of loot in the map according to testing, some feedback indicated that people wanted more, with hidden loot being missed by players that don't do as much exploring. So the first thing on the checklist was more loot. For less exploratory players, there is more loot in obvious containers and obvious breakable crates out in the open. For more curious players, there is more loot hidden behind new hidden areas or within more buried treasure chests findable from the treasure hunting tool retrieved in the starting island. Next, there were some steps taken to make the boss lore more immersive within the locations, with updated runestones to include more about each boss that you're approaching, more banners that match the color of the new banner holders on the roads from the road update, and also any pre-spawned enemies got names that would indicate they were followers of the upcoming boss. Next on the checklist was more beds or more spawn points. Valheim is meant to be played as a hardcore survival experience, so we originally decided to only have beds in every few locations going down the road. This added weight to each death, and we hoped would make you play more carefully so that you could avoid having a long run back. In the end, after receiving feedback, it really just encouraged some players to either cheat or to build their own beds, which despite building being a core element of Valheim, we had completely removed the need for it, considering that a hammer could take down or allow the player to build around anything that we had designed. So to avoid all of that, I added more beds. Alright, so after the checklist, which also included a basic update of the loot, lore, and enemies, it was time for the more significant location-specific updating, where some locations were already very immersive and didn't need much, but some locations had room for improvement. For example, creating environments in the Ashlands made me realize something, and that was that hidden loot was much more attainable in a setting where the borders were more clearly defined, instead of just having like an infinite forest out back where something could be hidden anywhere. So a lot of the locations that needed work got clearly defined borders with, for example, tree walls or cliff edges. Then some locations also got updates visually, or minor updates adding options for exploration. Like for example, this corrupted village on the way to Bone Mass got visually updated and also got some cool ooze poisoning the waters. And this roadblock on the way to the Elder, which has new ways for exploration. Or even the Bear Cave locations getting expanded further down the road, or getting new sections added onto the caves. Now on top of performance changes, adding borders, updating visuals, adding more options for exploration, some locations got whole new additions to the quest lines, like the Metavoker's floating platforms being expanded by 8 new platforms on the road to Bone Mass. And especially on the way to the Queen, where there were lots of expanded locations, like the Grey Dwarf hideout being expanded into the trees and far out into the water, or with a roadblock being turned into a fully enclosed location with explorable areas on both sides, or even the final plains villages that you take down on the final stretch of the long road before you cross the sea to the final town. These were all expanded to be fully explorable custom villages rather than the game's vanilla villages. And from the end of the road here, all the way back to the very first road to Eikthyr, the Enchanter's hideout got a new dungeon room to clear out at the end. And of course, much more in all of the locations throughout the map. But speaking of the first road to Eikthyr, the last thing done in both final updates was updating this road a lot. While this road leads you to a boss like every other road, it was originally designed to more importantly teach you how the map works. Unfortunately, that made the experience slow at times. So I did a lot of work to drop you right into a fully immersive road and fully immersive locations, keeping up with the pace of the rest of the map, making this first road a great place to start the adventure for the first time, or come back and see what it looks like today when it's finally done. So now, after 3 years of planning and development, I can finally say that all the way from the beginning to the end of the adventure map, it is finally where I want it to be, and it can finally be taken out of beta and be considered done, with the only contingent being maybe some possible bug fixes in the future. Alright, so I've got some links in the description if you want to support this completely free project. The download is up this weekend if you want to try it out. Thanks for watching, and take care.